Coffee with the Kelseys, with Sylvia and Morton Kelsey. Time to pour another cup of coffee and relax, as this happy couple share with you their experiences and their problems. Sylvia?
Thank you, Bill O'Connor, and good morning, everyone.
And this is Morton Kelsey wishing one and all a happy Thursday.
Oh, and we have such a pleasant surprise for all of our coffee time friends this morning. A guest we've wanted to visit with for quite some time now, and we didn't tell you about it beforehand because she's had a severe cold, and we weren't sure she could make it. But now we are sure because she's sitting right here with us.
Yes, we're pleased to have with us Mrs. Morris Cottle, internationally famous as Gitta Gradova, one of the greatest pianists of our time. But Gitta Gradova has preferred to be Mrs. Morris Cottle for a number of years, and for one important reason: motherhood. Gitta Gradova has played with the finest orchestras in our country and abroad, and her career could so easily have continued on uninterrupted for the enjoyment of all music lovers.
But the great career, a great musical career, was exchanged for the greater career of home and family, and we just thought all of you would enjoy hearing about that.
So it's welcome to Coffee Time, Mrs. Cottle, and this is your chance to greet all your friends and ours.
Good morning, everybody.
Mrs. Cottle, when was your first interest shown in music? Would you mind telling us that?
Well, when I was about 4, my father took me to hear a performance, and when I came home, it seems that I had gone over to the piano and tried to play what I had heard. What impressed my father particularly was that I tried to make an improvised bass. At that moment, he decided perhaps he had a talented child.
At the age of 4? Oh, my.
How important do you feel are these preschool years, say the first 5 years of a child's life?
I think they're most important. I think they set the pattern for the rest of the life.
Tell us a little something about your very early years, say around 2 or 3. I mean, do you recall anything that early?
Well, I used to hear so many stories about my childhood. But I remember one particularly. When I was about 2, they say, or 2.5, I was always very envious of my sister, who played the piano well and played it a lot. Since she monopolized the instrument, I monopolized the instrument. I had to take a chair and push it next to the piano, take a newspaper, which looked like a piece of music to me at that age, and keep turning it simultaneously as she turned her music. But when she wouldn't let me get to the instrument, I decided to put pennies between the keys so that she couldn't play.
So that you couldn't play. And how old were you then, about 2?
About 2.
She couldn't play. If you couldn't play, she couldn't play.
Well, they decided the best thing to do was to have her teach me.
Well, I certainly like what you said about those early years being so important, because we've talked about that so much here on Coffee Time, and it's certainly nice to hear.
Well, I don't think you can stress it enough. I think the first 5, 6 years of the child's life are most important years.
It sets the pattern for the adult life.
I think it sets the pattern for the rest of the life. I'm quite sure. I shouldn't say I think. I'm quite certain.
We're wrong, really, sometimes then to blame schools and perhaps radio programs and everything else that the children are exposed to, because parents do have an opportunity during those early years to influence the child and to expose the child to the
The
right.
parents have the greatest opportunity in the first 6 years. You cannot attribute failures and shortcomings to the school environment. The child has the home environment for the first 6 years of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And if he goes to school as a secure, that's a rather large word, but as a secure child, that child will have much less difficulty in making an adjustment in the school.
You believe in starting a child very young on music?
Well, I find generalizations rather difficult, Sylvia.
Yeah.
I think that music for me should be an important part of the general education, an important part of the whole educational curriculum. So that if a school child, let's say a child starts school at about, first grade is usually around 6, I think.
That's right.
An instrument can be taken up at the age of 7. I do not believe in teaching a child of 3 or 4 unless you have some sort of an extraordinary genius on your hands, and that's a little rare.
But tell us, Mrs. Cottle, when did you make your first public appearance?
At the age of 6.
You recall anything about this and where you were?
It's a little difficult for me. I mean, I started to play, the lessons began when I was about 5, I think. And at 6, I already played. At the age of 9, I remember rather vividly. It was my first orchestral appearance.
Getting away from your early childhood, we're going to go back to that in just a little while. because we have a lot of questions to ask you about children and some of your views and opinions on home life and family life. But we know that you have played with and met the great in the music world, very many great names, and we wish you would recall a few names for us and, perhaps a story or two regarding some of these associations.
Well, I must say with a feeling of humility that I've had the privilege of knowing some very great artists and having contact with them. Great masters like Sergei Rachmaninoff, who was a very great influence in my life. I had the privilege of knowing Joseph Hoffman, the Dean of Pianists, also a very great influence. And I must also say that it has been a privilege and a joy to have the friendship of a man like Horowitz, also a great influence in my life. I'm very grateful for all this. I have played with the major orchestras in this country. I started out at the age of 19 with the New York Philharmonic.
At 19?
At 19, when Mengelberg was the conductor. And I have to confess that it was very exciting.
Oh,
it was something.
Was your debut?
Facing that after just about 5 years after being a struggling student in New York, coming out to play with the New York Philharmonic at 19.
Tremendous thrill.
What other orchestras were you with, Mrs. Cottle?
Well, from there on in, I went to play with the major orchestras of America. I enjoyed playing almost every year with the Chicago Symphony in Frederickstock.
Imagine many of our friends have heard her play.
Oh, yes. Can you relate for us any particular philosophers of your old friends in the music world? And I tell you what, we'd especially like to hear something about Maestro Toscanini, who was here last week.
Yes. Such a man, I mean, one can't talk enough about. Perhaps it's difficult to say anything about him. Such an extraordinary genius.
A grand old gentleman, too.
The thing that stands out in my mind, I mean, the man's honesty and integrity, the great integrity for work. He thinks music all the time and talks music all the time. But he's a very kind person, a very, very simple kind person, and a great love for children he has. I heard something rather amusing. He has such wonderful humor. He loves to watch television. He thinks, it's great relaxation. He watches wrestling and boxing, knows everybody's name. And someone was rather amazed to discover that and said, Maestro, is it true that you watch television all the time? He said, yes, I can't be a genius 24 hours a day.
You were telling us this morning, we were glad to hear it too, how well he looked when he was here.
Looks simply magnificent. He hasn't a crease or a wrinkle in his face.
At 83 years of age.
Very healthy. And I must tell you, Mo, he has more pep than we have.
How about when you first met him? Do you recall?
When I first met him, I was in awe, as everybody is.
Yeah.
And I naturally remained standing while he stood. And I found myself standing for 3 hours and 4 outs. Finally, I couldn't stand any longer, and I timidly said, Maestro, wouldn't you like to sit down? And he looked at me and he said, no. I don't sit. I was born standing.
Oh, what a wonderful story. Well, going back just a bit now, am I right in believing that you were a child prodigy?
Yes, I was a child prodigy.
And as a child prodigy, I believe that you have some very definite ideas on exploitation of a talented child.
Yes, very definite, Sylvia, very definite ideas. I'm against exploitation of any kind.
Talented
I
or
believe it makes no difference. A talented child should be treated like any child, a normal child, with good playtime, with children of his own age, so that he makes what is the most important thing in the world, the proper social adjustment. He shouldn't stand out as an individual freak of some sort. He shouldn't be taken away from his play periods and forced to practice. He should be allowed to live like any other child. And he stands a much better chance of expressing any real talent that might be there in later years.
Well, that's an interesting point. He has really a better chance if he's permitted to live long just as any normal child.
Furthermore, I don't believe in a child coming out to play and be exploited in public. He should be able to play in his classroom. He should be able to play in his teacher's studio and be judged by his peers on that age level.
Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose there might be a little danger sometime if a little tot, say, is making a public appearance, and sometimes things happen that's embarrassing for the child. Would that perhaps have an effect?
Yes, I think it can be very traumatic. It can leave irreparable damage on the child who might have a loss of memory at the tender age of 6 or 7 and lose faith in himself.
Could so easily happen.
It can very easily happen.
So you believe in keeping him right in the classrooms all during the years when the child is learning?
I believe that the child should not be presented for public performances until he is really adult. And I do not speak here of chronological age only. I mean emotionally adult, artistically adult, intellectually adult, and in all ways.
Well, in your opinion, do you believe in forcing a child at all?
No, I do not believe in forcing children to do anything.
How about encouraging a child along
Well, that's much better. I believe in creating interest for children, guiding them, encouraging them, but certainly not forcing them. By forcing them, you're blocking them.
There's quite a difference in encouraging and forcing it. Mm-hmm. Did you continue with your career after your first child was born?
Yes, for several years. Immediately after my first child was born, I went to Europe to play. But, I was very happy to come back.
I imagine every time you arrived, you were probably thinking about getting back.
Seeing that the first moment I arrived in Europe before the tour started, I was looking for passage back to America.
Did you realize you were going to feel that way before the children were born?
Yes, I must confess I did. I knew from the start that the important career for me was not on the concert platform, but the one in the home.
Tell us, Mrs. Cottle, were there any conflicts in your own mind about giving up your wonderful career for motherhood?
Never. That's always a little amazing.
It is.
For people to understand. But I never had great conflict about giving up the career. Because I always felt that the other career for me was more important. Or, otherwise I would be still on the concert platform.
That's true. Mm-hmm. Tell us, what do you feel is the most important thing that parents can give their children?
Just one word. It covers the whole world, though. Security.
Mm-hmm.
You can't give a child enough security.
What advice do you give to parents where young talent is concerned? Do parents sometimes bring a child to you, knowing of your career and your great knowledge of music, to ask your opinion, and what do you tell them?
Well, when we're through with the subject of security, which is endless, I always try to beg the parent to allow the child to have a normal and complete general education. It is barbaric to think that the child must come out and make a career at 11 or 12. Let the child have his 4 years of high school, and let the child go on to college and have 4 years of good, sound academic education. He'll be a much more important artist.
Do you think the child is always cheated if the mother, say for economic reasons, must help earn the living of the family?
No, Milton, I can't say that I do, because I'm one who believes in the quality of time and not quantity of time. If the mother is out with the child 12, 15 consecutive hours a day, it is irritable and irritated by that. That doesn't mean that she's being a conscientious mother. It's better to be with the child for 3 hours. The children more than 12 hours.
I think that's
wonderful. So you see, we can't answer that too generally.
The quality of the time devoted to the child.
Quality is very important.
Mm-hmm. Well, finally, all music lovers, I'm sure, join with me in hoping you haven't given up all thoughts of resuming your career. Have you any word for us about that, Mrs. Cottle?
Milton, the invitations have been very gracious.
Wonderful.
Very tempting. And I don't think I'm quite ready to say that I'm definitely going to give it up. Chances are I'll come back.
How old are your children now?
My daughter, Judy, is 16. My son, Tom, is 13.
Well, they're getting up in a few years older now, and so it makes quite a bit of difference under that age.
I'm sorry to break in here, but all too soon we must call a halt to today's session of Coffee Time.
And thank you so much, Gitta Gradova, Mrs. Morris Cottle, for sitting in with us this morning and giving us the benefit of your advice on careers and home and family.
Thank you, Sylvia Moulton. I was delighted to be here.
Well, friends, our guest today was Mrs. Morris Cottle, internationally famous as Gitta Gradova, one of the truly great pianists of our time, but who found more sustained gratification in her preferred career of mother and homemaker.
This is Sylvia saying goodbye, everyone.
And Milton Kelsey speaking for Sylvia and Susan and all of us down here, and wishing for you and for those you love the best of luck and the very best of health. Good morning, all.